Ya Allah, ya Syafi, ya Mu'afi, ampunilah dosa-dosa kami, jauhkanlah kami dari sebarang keburukan, penyakit berbahaya dan perkara-perkara yang membinasakan. Ya Allah, lindungilah kami, selamatkanlah kami, dan sejahterakanlah kami. Rabbana ighfir lana wa li ikhwanina alladhina sabaquna bil iman wa la taj'al fi qulubina ghillan lil ladzina amanu rabbana innaka ra'ufur rahim. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minkum.
Amin ya rabbal alamin. Majlis merakamkan ucapan terima kasih atas bacaan doa sebentar tadi. Meneruskan atur cara, sama-sama kita saksikan tayangan multimedia sempena Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz kali kelima ini. Kita saksikan bersama.
Building sustainable national and commercial institutions is central to supporting the economic advancement of nations.
So we need a new form of governance within ASEAN. We know that there are things that need to be reformed and to be instituted. And there's nothing outside of this concept of good governance.
It seems to me that the great task of all our democracies is constantly to work and strive to ensure that we take the steps, we promote the rule of law, and we do everything to embody the rule of law as part of the culture or DNA of every state.
Soalnya governance itu amat penting. Governance itu amat penting kita memikirkan bagaimana kita dapat memajukan negara
memajukan tanah air. Majlis pada pagi ini diteruskan dengan pidato pengenalan pengucaptama Diraja Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz. Untuk itu, majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Muhammad Ikhwan Haji Toriman, Naib Chancellor UKM untuk menghadap dan memohon perkenan Beliau Mahmud Tuanku Canselor bagi menyampaikan pidato pengenalan pengucaptama Diraja. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Menghadap ke bawah budi yang maha mulia yang diperkuat besar Negeri Sembilan dan khusus Tuanku Muhriz ini almarhum Tuanku Munawir, Chancellor Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. Menghadap ke bawah budi yang maha mulia Tuanku Ampuan Besar Negeri Sembilan dan khusus Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti almarhum Tuanku Besar Mahmud. Ampun Tuanku beri kedua ampun, sembah patih, mohon diampun. Patih bagi pihak pengurusan tertinggi dan warga UKM merafah sembah dan menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih atas sudi perkenan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku berdua berangkat mencemar budi ke Majlis Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz yang ke-5 ini. Sesungguhnya keberangkatan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku Canselor, budi yang maha mulia Tuanku Ampuan Besar Negeri Sembilan dan khusus Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti almarhum Tuanku Besar Mahmud bersama putera-putera yang amat mulia Tuanku Besar Seri Menanti Tuanku Ali Taudin ibni Tuanku Muhriz dan yang amat mulia Tuanku Zin Al-Abidin ibni Tuanku Muhriz merupakan suatu tanda penghormatan yang tinggi buat patih dan juga seluruh warga Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. UKM merapah sembah setinggi-tinggi kasih atas naungan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku Canselor yang telah memandu UKM selama lebih 10 tahun. Di bawah naungan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku Canselor, UKM terus melakar sejarah dan kecemerlangan yang membanggakan masyarakat dan negara. Hari ini, UKM bakal mencatat satu lagi sejarah melalui penganjuran majlis ilmu yang berprestij dan penuh inspirasi. UKM turut menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih atas perkenan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku Canselor untuk UKM menganjurkan Majlis Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz yang ke-5 pada tahun ini. Ampun Tuanku. Patih seterusnya memohon limpah perkenan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku untuk mengalu-alukan kehadirin sekalian serta meneruskan pidato pengenalan Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz ke-5 dengan memperkenalkan pengucaptama Diraja yang diundang khas dari seberang laut untuk bersama-sama dalam majlis yang sangat bermakna ini. Beliau adalah Tuan yang terutama, Profesor Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. Kehadiran Tuan yang terutama, Profesor Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono ke majlis ini pastinya dapat mengiratkan lagi hubungan dua hala antara Malaysia dan Indonesia. Ampun Tuan. Tuan yang terutama Profesor Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, yang amat mulia Tuanku Besar Seri Menanti Tuanku Ali Taudin ibni Tuanku Muhriz, yang teramat mulia Datuk Seri Diraja Tan Sri Tuanku Puteri Intan Syafinas binti almarhum Sultan Abdul Halim Muazzam Shah, Tuanku Temanggung Kedah, Tuanku Pro Chancellor UKM. Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Haji Aminuddin Harun, Menteri Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuan yang terutama Yudhoyono Duta Besar Indonesia ke Malaysia, yang berhormat Dr. Razak Abdul Malik, Setiausaha Kerajaan Negeri Sembilan, yang amat mulia Tuanku Zin Al-Abidin ibni Tuanku Muhriz, yang berbahagia Datuk Seri Abdul Razak Jaafar, Ketua Setiausaha Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi, yang berbahagia Profesor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razak, Pengerusi Lembaga Pengarah UKM, yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Razak Muhammad Nordin, Timbalan dan Chancellor Canselor Jaringan Industri Alumni dan Masyarakat merangkap pengerusi jabatan kuasa Majlis Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz Ke-5. Yang mulia kerabat-kerabat Diraja, yang berbahagia ahli-ahli lembaga pengarah UKM, Div-Div Kehormat, Timbalan-Timbalan Canselor, para pegawai pengurusan dan pegawai kanan UKM, delegasi dari Indonesia, serta hadirin hadirat yang dihormati sekalian. Tampan perwira di medan perjuangan, mengisi amanah menabur bakti, selamat bertandang kami ucapkan ke Desa Ilmu UKM di Bangi. Tuan yang terutama Profesor Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, yang lebih mesra dikenali dengan sapaan SDY, merupakan Presiden ke-6 negara Indonesia. Negara serumpun kita di rantau ini yang puluhan ribu tahun silam dikenal sebagai pentas Sunda. Bapa SDY telah memimpin Indonesia selama 10 tahun bermula tahun 2004 sehingga tahun 2014. Beliau diputrakan di Jawa Timur pada 9 September 1949. Bapa SDY merupakan putera tunggal pasangan H.R. Soekarno dan Siti Habibah. Darah Satria memang mengalir dalam tubuhnya. Ayahanda beliau merupakan pegawai tentera yang berwibawa, lagi disegani dan pernah menjawat jawatan Lieutenant 1 dalam pasukan tentera Indonesia sebelum beliau besar. Bapa SDY mendapat pendidikan awal di Sekolah Rakyat Indonesia ketika beliau berada di tahun 5. Buat pertama kalinya beliau diberi pendedahan tentang Akademik Militer Nasional di Magelang, Jawa Tengah. Akademik Militer Nasional kemudiannya dikenali sebagai Akademik Angkatan Bersenjata Republik Indonesia atau AKABRI. Dengan tekad yang tinggi, beliau berusaha untuk mencapai cita-cita yang dipupuk sejak kecil, iaitu menjadi seorang anggota tentera perwira negara. Sejurus selepas tamat pendidikan menengah atas pada tahun 1968, namun lantaran terlambat mendaftar, beliau tidak berjaya memasuki AKABRI. Bapa SDY kemudian diterima sebagai mahasiswa dalam bidang teknik mesin di Institut 10 November Surabaya. Beliau turut melanjutkan pendidikan dalam bidang pendidikan guru sekolah lanjutan pertama di Malang, Jawa Timur. Pada masa yang sama, beliau turut mempersiapkan diri untuk menyertai AKABRI. Usaha gigih beliau akhirnya membuahkan hasil. Pada tahun 1970, beliau berjaya memasuki AKABRI yang beroperasi di Magelang, Jawa Tengah. Sewaktu pengabdiannya di AKABRI, Bapa SDY telah memperoleh kejayaan cemerlang sehingga berjaya meraih anugerah lulusan terbaik AKABRI tahun 1973. Atas kecemerlangan tersebut, beliau telah menerima penghargaan Rencana Arifi Makayasa. Mengimbas perjalanan kerjaya Bapa SDY dalam bidang ketenteraan, ternyata banyak babak penting dan menarik yang dilalui beliau. Sumbangan Bapa SDY dalam bidang ketenteraan bermula apabila beliau menjawat jawatan sebagai dan Kompan Unit Dinut 330 Konstrat pada tahun 1974 hingga 1976. Beliau kemudiannya telah terpilih untuk mengikuti pendidikan lintas udara dan pendidikan pasukan komando di Pusat Pendidikan Angkatan Darat Amerika Syarikat Fort Benning, Georgia pada tahun 1975. Ketika bertugas di markas besar TNI-AD, Bapa SDY sekali lagi mendapat peluang untuk menerima latihan di Amerika Syarikat selama setahun. Beliau pernah mengikuti latihan ketenteraan di Panama pada tahun 1983, Belgium dan Jerman pada tahun 1984, serta mengikuti kursus komando batalion pada tahun 1985. Perjalanan karier Bapa SDY dalam bidang ketenteraan melonjak dengan cemerlang. Beliau pernah menjawat jawatan sebagai Pangdam Tua Sriwijaya, berangkat Ketua Bakosta Nasda dan Ketua Fraksi ABRI MPR Sidang Istimewa MPR 1998 sebelum mengetuai Staf Teritorial Cluster ABRI pada tahun 1998 hingga 1999. Sejurus selepas itu, beliau mula mengorak langkah dalam dunia politik. Di sinilah bermulanya perjalanan hidup Bapa SDY sebagai pemimpin tersohor yang dihormati oleh seluruh masyarakat di Asia Tenggara, khususnya di Indonesia dan Malaysia. Karier politik Bapa SDY bermula ketika beliau menjawat jawatan sebagai Menteri Pertambangan dan Energi di bawah pentadbiran kelahiran Presiden Abdul atau Gus Dur. Bapak S. Dewan kemudiannya dilantik sebagai Menteri Koordinator Bidang Politik, Sosial dan Keamanan di bawah pentadbiran Profesor Dr. Insinyur Megawati Soekarno Putri. Pada tahun 2004, Bapak S. Dewan telah bertanding sebagai Presiden Indonesia melalui pemilihan umum atau pemilu 2004. Beliau telah berjaya memenangi hati rakyat Indonesia sebagai Presiden Indonesia yang pertama dipilih melalui proses ini. Selama 10 tahun memerintah, Bapak SDY membawa berbagai kecemerlangan kepada negara Indonesia. Contohnya, beliau telah berjaya mengukuhkan hubungan antarabangsa Indonesia dengan banyak negara di dunia. Di bawah kepimimpinannya, negara Indonesia turut berkembang dari segi ekonomi dan kuasa serantau. Negara Indonesia juga menjadi ahli G20 serta memainkan peranan dalam isu keganasan antarabangsa, pemanasan global dunia dan sebagainya. Hubungan istimewa di antara Indonesia dan Malaysia juga tidak pernah diabaikan. Pelbagai inisiatif hasil perbincangan melalui Majlis Perundangan Tahunan telah dilaksanakan dengan jayanya. Bapak SDY telah mengenal pasti kerjasama ekonomi sebagai komponen penting dalam hubungan dua hala Malaysia-Indonesia. Tidak cukup dengan itu, kerjasama yang lebih erat dalam bidang pendidikan, budaya, hubungan masyarakat, pemerkasaan pasukan polis turut dilaksanakan bagi kedua-dua buah negara. Ampun Tuanku, izinkan Patik berkongsi sebuah cerita menarik dengan tetamu di Dewan ini tentang seorang lelaki warga negara Malaysia yang pernah bekerja di sebuah ladang kelapa sawit di Kalimantan, Indonesia. Kira-kira 10 tahun yang lalu, lelaki ini dihadiahkan 10 ekor burung merak oleh Bapak SDY sebagai tanda penghargaan selepas menyertai operasi menyelamat mangsa bencana tsunami di Aceh. Hadiah tersebut memberi inspirasi kepada lelaki ini untuk memelihara burung merak secara serius. Berbekalkan sedikit modal dan latihan, lelaki tersebut akhirnya telah berjaya memiliki hampir 200 ekor burung merak. Tertarik dengan usaha beliau, Kerajaan Negeri Perak telah bersetuju untuk menubuhkan perai Peacock Eco Park untuk diusahakan oleh lelaki tersebut. Pada hari ini, lelaki yang dikenali sebagai di Taman ini bertugas sebagai perunding burung profesional yang memberi khidmat nasihat kepada pelbagai organisasi di seluruh negara. Terima kasih Bapak SPY Idris Budi menjadi permata budi yang baik di tengah negara. Bapak SDY mengakhiri tugas beliau sebagai Presiden Indonesia ke-6 pada 20 Oktober 2014. Walaupun tidak lagi mentadbir negara Indonesia sebagai Presiden, beliau masih aktif berpolitik. Beliau pernah menjawat jawatan sebagai Ketua Umum Partai Demokrat sejak tahun 2013 hingga 2020. UKM sangat berbangga menerima kehadiran beliau sebagai Pengucaptama Diraja dalam majlis pada hari ini. Pengalaman luas beliau mentadbir negara dengan tunjangan ilmu dalam bidang ketenteraan menjadikan Bapak SDY seorang figura hebat dan berwibawa. Justru program syarahan pada pagi ini pastinya akan memberikan suatu perspektif baharu yang bermanfaat buat kita semua. Indah bulan di kala purnama, cahaya benderang di malam rembulan. Budi Tuan kami terima untuk dikenang bertahun-tahun. Ampun Tuanku, sekian saja sembah ucapan Patik. Patik sekali lagi merafak sembah dan menjunjung setinggi-tinggi kasih atas suri kenan budi yang maha mulia Tuanku berdua berangkat mencemar budi ke Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz ke-5 ini. Patik sekalian mendoakan semoga Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala melanjutkan usia budi yang maha mulia Tuanku berdua serta putera-putera di dalam keadaan sihat walafiat dan kekal memerintah di atas takhta kerajaan Negeri Sembilan dengan penuh keadilan dan kebijaksanaan. Menjunjung kasih Tuanku, sekian wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Para hadirin yang dihormati sekalian, kini tibalah kita di saat-saat yang dinanti-nantikan. Maka majlis dengan segala hormatnya mempersilakan Tuan yang terutama Profesor Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono untuk menyampaikan syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz dengan tajuk A Better World is Possible. Dengan segala hormatnya dipersilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May peace be upon us all. Yang Maha Mulia, yang Dipertuan Besar Negeri Sembilan dan Khusus, Tuanku Muhriz Ibni Almarhum Tuanku Muhriz, Canselor University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Yang Maha Mulia, Tunku Ampuan Besar Negeri Sembilan dan Khusus, Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti Almarhum Tunku Besar Mahmud. Yang amat mulia, Tunku Besar Sri Menanti, Tunku Ali Redaudin Ibni Tuanku Muhriz. Yang mulia, Menteri Besar Negeri Sembilan. Yang mulia, Bapak Hermono, Duta Besar Indonesia untuk Malaysia. Yang berbahagia, Datuk Sri Abdul Razak Jafar, Secretary General, Ministry of Higher Education, Malaysia. The honorable members of the Indonesian Parliament and former ministers of the Republic of Indonesia. Yang teramat mulia, Datuk Sri Diraja, Tan Sri Tunku Putri Intan Safinasi binti Almarhum Sultan Abdul Halim Azam Shah, Pro Chancellor of UKM. Yang berbahagia, Profesor Emeritus Dr. Muhammad Abdul Razak, Chairman UKM Board of Directors. Yang berbahagia, Profesor Dr. Muhammad Ikhwan Haji Doliman, Vice Chancellor University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Dear faculty members and students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored and delighted to be here at the University Kebangsaan Malaysia. I am grateful for this wonderful opportunity to speak to the faculty and students of this great university. It was actually last month that I received Vice Chancellor Professor Ikhwan at my residence in Cikias, where they extended an invitation from Canselor Tuanku Muhriz to give an address at UKM. I immediately and happily accepted that invitation. I do know that the UKM is widely known as one of the leading universities in Malaysia and in Southeast Asia. Here, you have built an institution driven by the insatiable quest for knowledge, excellence, and service. Graduates from this campus have become agents of progress for Malaysia and thus help make your country and the world a better place. I am also aware that a good number of Indonesians have studied here. I want to thank the UKM faculty and students for making them feel welcome here. By the way, Your Majesty, I did not come alone. I have brought with me several Indonesian colleagues. My former minister, Dr. Hatta Rajasa, Air Force Marshal Joko Suyanto, Profesor Terutama Yustianto, Dr. Andi Malarangan, Dr. Dino Patigal. I also brought a volleyball team. Yes, you heard it right, volleyball team. I have loved volleyball all my life. I was a member of my high school's volleyball team. Later on, I also joined Indonesian Military Academy's volleyball team. When I was president, one of my favorite recreational activities would be to play volleyball with my security guards. Of course, for those who were not in duty. At first, it was a bit frustrating because somehow they would always let me win. Mereka mengalah biar saya senang. But after a while, it did become more competitive. On December 2019, 6 months after the passing away of my lovely wife, Yudhoyono, I have, among other things, built a volleyball team. This team is called AWANI, or Love Ani, named after my late beloved wife. This is a serious team with dedicated athletes, and I am pleased to say that the AWANI made history by winning the Indonesian Professional League, Proliga 2022, and its first debut. The AWANI team will be playing a friendly game here in Malaysia. I have promised to them, if they win, they will all get all the nasi lemak they can eat. You are all welcome to watch the game, but don't use it as an excuse to skip your class. Ladies and gentlemen, it is always good to be here in Malaysia. For me, coming to Malaysia does not feel going abroad. It feels like taking a short ride to visit a close cousin. During my time as Indonesian President, developing close relations with Malaysia was a foreign policy priority. We established special diplomatic mechanisms in the form of an annual bilateral meeting between the Indonesian President and the Malaysian Prime Minister, a mechanism that continues today. From this engagement, we were able to manage what is essentially a rich and condensed bilateral relation, covering security, trade, investment, infrastructure, tourism, education, migrant workers, and of course, ASEAN cooperation. Notwithstanding our good relations, I must admit, sometimes I do get nervous about the relationship. This usually comes when there is a football match between Indonesia and Malaysia. Deciding which is the better team is a very sensitive issue for both Indonesia and Malaysia. While of course I have my own opinion, I would like to stay away from that subject for now. Saya takut untuk menyebutnya. Today, I would like to share my thoughts with you about some of the global issues that define our time today and how we can make it better. The theme of my speech is a better world is possible. Kita bisa membuat dunia kita lebih baik. Let me begin with this observation. As I look at the state of the world now, it is hard to feel an overwhelming optimism. One young person recently told me he saw the plight of 50 million Ukrainian refugees, the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, the political chaos in Sri Lanka, the shooting of school children in Uvalde, Texas, U.S. inflation rate rises at highest level in 4 decades. With all this, he was feeling somewhat depressed about the world. It's a feeling shared by many of his peers around the globe. To put it plainly, the world does not seem to be heading in the right direction. It is certainly not getting any better. In fact, it may be getting worse, at least in the near future. We are poised to see more economic hardship, more strategic tussle, and more environmental problems. Let me highlight at least 3 major areas which present challenges for the international community, namely geopolitics, economy, and climate. The first challenge is the increasing dangerous geopolitical context. We are entering a new era of major power rivalry. Some pundits have begun to talk about Cold War 2.0, New Cold War, or hot peace in relation to this development. For our convenience, let's call it a condition of geopolitical recession. The Ukraine war has formalized this geopolitical recession and also elevated it into the next level. Major power rivalries are now entering a new dangerous phase. The risks are higher, the costs are higher, the stakes are higher. It is a systemic competition with a zero-sum mindset, meaning one side has to win and other side has to lose. The relationship between major power is marked by intensified conflict, increasing rivalries, rising insecurity, and growing mistrust. In this context, we are also seeing more tools being weaponized for strategic gains, such as finance, commodities, energy, food, investment, and even outer space. And as the tussles are fueled by pride and emotion, we should expect to see more brainmanship, which give way to potential miscalculation. We are seeing this in the case of the cross-Taiwan strait tension, which is sure to worsen U.S.-China relations for the foreseeable future. This morning, I watched BBC, telling about yesterday. There was a great military drill conducted by China near Taiwan. This responds to the visit of 5 U.S. lawmakers a day before. This increasing brinkmanship is no light matter if we take into account that some of the conflicting parties possess nuclear weapons. This geostrategic rivalry, I am afraid, is becoming semi-permanent feature of the international system. Even if somehow the Ukraine war miraculously ends tomorrow, the strategic contest between the West and Russia and the enormous resentment and mistrust that coming will remain in place. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as if geopolitical recession is not enough, we are also bracing for the specter of a possible global economic recession. At the end of 2021, all had high hopes for a better world economy in 2022. After all, more and more vaccines were being produced. Despite the problems of vaccine inequity, billions of people were vaccinated. Lockdowns were lifted. Businesses and schools are reopening. Air travel is booming. And many economies, including Malaysia and Indonesia, were rebounding. Yet, as the world begins to recover, we are unexpectedly hit with a multiple crisis. This is coming from resurgent pandemic that is hard-hitting in several countries and the devastating impact of the Ukraine war. There is also the threat of an emerging disease the monkeypox, which has been declared as a global health emergency by the WHO. The Ukraine war is fueling crisis on three fronts: food, energy, and finance. The price of wheat, maize, corn, cooking oil, fertilizer have gone up. Oil price rises significantly, and so does gas price. The sudden increase of food and energy price have caused the crisis of living costs in many countries. Some countries are benefiting from the rise in the price of some commodities such as palm oil and coal, but this is only momentary. We are seeing inflation at all-time high, both in developed and developing countries. Meanwhile, global debt hits record over $300 trillion. This is a surge of $100 trillion, which was the highest surge in World War II. The real concern is that 30% of emerging markets and 60% of low-income economies are at high risk of debt distress or not being able to meet repayments due. Thus, 100 countries have to reduce expenditures on social protection, education, and public health. To some low-income countries, it will also mean increased hunger and food insecurity, even crisis. The social and political impact of all this cannot be understated. Just last month, IMF warned that the world may be on the brink of an economic recession as the US, Europe, and China experience much slower growth than anticipated. This also translates to greater inequality. I was surprised to learn from the UN Inequality Report that in 2021, global inequalities remain extremely pronounced. The same report also said that the top 1% took 38% of all additional wealth accumulated since the mid-1990s, with an acceleration in 2020. No single strategy is sufficient to solve our all problems. Since the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, had expired in 2015, more than 190 leaders have committed to the new 2030 development agenda. They adopted the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to help us all end extreme poverty, fight inequality and injustice, and fix climate change. I was actually engaged in framing SDGs through my role as co-chair of the UN High-Level Panel of Eminent Persons on the post-2050 development agenda, together with Prime Minister David Cameron of UK and President Johnson of Liberia. At that time, I consciously wanted to ensure that development anywhere in the world in the next 15 years should aim toward zero extreme poverty, fulfill basic human needs, and protect human security. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, so all in all, it is a gloomy situation we are facing. We have been in similar situation in the past. The last time we had an economic crisis on such global scale was in 2008, the time when global financial crisis erupted. This crisis led to a loss of more than $2 trillion from the global economy. It led to a great recession and was followed by the European debt crisis. I was 4 years into my first term as President of Indonesia at that time. My immediate response was domestic: manage government spending, keep our monetary policies prudent, and undertake all measures to prevent massive layoff by companies. It was a difficult moment, Despite the global financial crisis, the Indonesian economy continued to grow by around 6%. We were able to minimize the impact of the global economic crisis. Indonesia's other response was on the international front to remake the G20 to become an instrument to manage the global economy. This was a very difficult challenge. Clearly, there was recognition that the world economic landscape had changed. The G7 alone could not make all the economic decisions for the rest of the world. I personally pushed hard for the G20 option, not the G8 plus, G13 or any other grouping. Alhamdulillah, in the end, the options of G20 was agreed. The G20 policies eventually helped cure the global recession and avoid global depression. The G20 facilitated strategic global cooperation at a critical time when it is most needed. It demonstrated what could be achieved when the 20 biggest economy consisting of developed and developing countries work together with a good degree of trust for a common goal. This is what is missing today. In contrast with 2008, the G20 today is divided and engulfed in a state of confrontation. By way of sanctions, economic warfare and other measures, economic claims are being rapidly decoupled. The appetite for cooperation is low. The process of dialogue has become stiff. Mistrust and resentment rule the day. It has become much harder to find a consensus. It is much harder to cooperate. I have mentioned geopolitics, security, pandemic, economy, and equity. I would like now to talk about a critical issue of our time, which is climate change. The greatest danger for the human race is whether or not future generation meaning the student generation and your children generation will live a boiling world that will be 4 degrees Celsius hotter compared to the pre-industrial time. A 4-degree world will be catastrophic to humanity. It will bring unimaginable damage to security, industry, agriculture, health, infrastructure, biodiversity, basically everything. Our planet Earth will become unlivable. As you all know, in 2015, the international community signed the Paris Climate Treaty. I was personally involved in that historic moment, Paris Climate Conference, in my capacity as the President of Global Green Growth Institute. In this historic accord, all countries agreed to set a target that would limit the rise of world temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius or lower. The world will still be hotter, of course, but it will be livable and manageable. The community of nations must reach a net zero world by mid-century. According to scientists, to reach a net zero world by mid-century, we must cut global emissions by half in the next decade. Then half it again the decade after. And half it again in the decade leading to 2050. This is going to be a gigantic effort, one that the community of nations has never done before. Every country needs to be part of this global effort, and everybody needs to change their mindset. Ladies and gentlemen, there is much debate and disagreement on the relation between economic growth and environmental protection, and also equity. I believe it is totally possible to develop a model which would deliver growth, sustainability, and equity. I would call this model sustainable growth with equity. I believe it is the right prescription to achieve what UN coins as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Equity is critical because it is about fairness. It is about justice. Economic growth and justice are mutually reinforcing. And participation of economic actors in an inclusive and comprehensive way will increase justice and also strengthen the sustainability of growth. It will also reduce inequality and development gap, as well as balance economic, social, and environmental objectives. And to achieve them, we need changes that are transformational, not just incremental. This can be achieved if countries, communities, businesses, and individuals adopt an ambitious green transition that would decarbonize the economy and their way of life. There are plenty of studies which prove that countries can achieve green transition and register high growth at the same time. Green economy does produce more jobs, better jobs, meaning more equity for our society. The key is the political will and capacity to embrace the transition toward a green, decarbonized, and net zero future. Countries that embrace this early on, countries that embrace this early on will reap the benefit earlier and faster. Countries that wait and lag behind will find themselves trailing at the back of the bus. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely worried about the Ukraine war and where it is heading. It seems that there is no global unity to stop the war. If the situation continues and there is no external force that can stop this very sad hostility, I fear the world will lead to the total war. World War III, once again, World War III. In my view, the world, in this case, the world's leader, should care and do something. Inaction is not an option. Inaction will place our world in a dangerous state. As for me, as a former leader, I also try to do something by sending a letter to Club de Madrid, a grouping of former democratic president and prime minister, to work together to find solutions for world problems. I am glad Club de Madrid responds positively to my proposal. Truly, a larger framework for preventing world crisis is needed, mainly related to geopolitics and international security. It seems that we have to go back to basics in the resolution of the Russo-Western conflict, a solution that can finally be accepted by both sides who are locked in fierce hostility today. Despite all the conflicts around the world, despite seemingly dead-end situations, there is always hope. Peace is always possible. You just have to be patient and keep working at it. This is what happened in Aceh during my presidency. Aceh is a province in Indonesia that had been burdened by protracted conflict for 30 years. Before 2004, we tried peace talks. Each of them failed. We tried military measures. They did not solve the problem, and sometimes get it worse. It seemed that the conflict was getting worse and worse, with the risk of more lives becoming casualties. But I kept believing in the necessity of peace. After the deadly tsunami in 2004, we made new overtures, which new format of negotiation. By mid-2005, after some very hard negotiations, but by keeping goodwill, the Indonesian government and the Bangi were finally able to sign a permanent peaceful political settlement based on special autonomy for Aceh. It was built peace with dignity. That peace holds today. Former combatants have become friends and neighbors. If we did not believe in the value of peace and pursued military campaign instead, Aceh would still be at war up to now. The lesson learned is that we need to keep believing and dedicating ourselves to peace. Believe that there is always light at the end of the tunnel, no matter how long the tunnel may be. Ladies and gentlemen, as for us in Southeast Asia, it would be naive to expect that our region will be totally sterile from this new development. In fact, in the midst of recent development, the strategic significance of Southeast Asia has become more important. We should expect effort by major powers to pull ASEAN as a group, as well as individual countries in either direction. The 10 ASEAN countries now have a population of over 662 million, with a combined GDP of 3.2 trillion, which makes it the fifth largest economy in the world. Economy, of course, converts to diplomatic and political resilience. It also translates into confidence and stronger regionalism. Thus, I would posit that ASEAN leverage and capacity to respond to major power rivals in our region is much better than several decades ago. However, this will be a recession is another challenge for ASEAN this year. How will ASEAN respond? How do we prevent or at least minimize major power rivalries in our region? Can we get them to cooperate at least in Southeast Asia? How can ASEAN remain in the driving seat on our own region? How do we make use of the various regional architectures to ensure peace, stability, and cooperation in Southeast Asia and beyond? These are not easy questions, but these are still questions that the leaders of ASEAN must grapple with and provide some answers to when we meet at the end of this year. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I have pointed out that the world we live in today faces all these complex challenges: geopolitical recession, international security issues, economic problems, and various environmental complications. However, as a former head of state and head of government, I always believe a better world is possible. My dissent is a better world is possible if all those challenges can be overcome by an effective, healthy, and just world order. Indeed, any durable and peaceful 21st century world order would depend on how we can deviate from the unhappy zero-sum mindset of the 19th and 20th century, where power shift will always accompanied by conflict and even war. We need to find a new path forward. I would call this agenda as ushering the geopolitics of cooperation, where powers, large, medium, and small, interact on the basis of their commonalities rather than differences. With a forward-looking mindset and leaving behind their zero-sum game in favor of a win-win approach. You know, I actually do not mind to see major powers and all powers compete in our region, so long they compete for peace, for economic progress, and for common prosperity. This means we welcome for them not to repel one another, but to compete in our region in a positive way, to spread their soft powers, to do more trade, more investment, more institutional exchanges, more tourism, and more technology transfer. The more they do this, the more our region will benefit. The more everybody wins, and the more we have global peace. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say that to promote geopolitics of cooperation, we need to close the widening trust deficit and develop strategic trust between nations. Strategic trust does not develop overnight. They grow from time-consuming effort, from countless meetings and talks, from the experience of working together, which lead to mutual understanding. They involve a lengthy give and take process, and a constant demonstrations of goodwill. Strategic trust grows from sustained confidence building measures and success in managing or resolving conflict. When we somehow reach the so-called geopolitics of cooperation, a better world is indeed possible. I thank you.
Terima kasih kepada Tuan Yang Terutama dan Majlis memohon kepada Tuan Yang Terutama untuk terus kekal berada di atas pentas. Ampun Tuanku, sebagai tanda penghargaan kepada Tuan Yang Terutama, Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, Majlis dengan segala hormat mempersilakan yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Muhammad Irfan Haji Toriman Naib Canselor untuk menyembah sila dan memohon perkenan Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku Canselor dan Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku Akan Besar Negeri Sembilan Darul Khusus bagi menyampaikan cenderamata penghargaan kepada Tuan Yang Terutama Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. Dengan penuh takzim, Majlis menyembah silakan Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku untuk menganugerahkan cendera penghargaan kepada Tuan Yang Terutama Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, iaitu buku-buku Syarahan Tuanku Muhriz serta tepak sirih sebagai simbol pemanis kata, nilai dan tradisi Melayu. Seterusnya, Majlis mempersilakan Tuan Yang Terutama Dr. Haji Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono untuk menyampaikan buku Syarahan Canselor Tuanku Muhriz Ke-5 kepada Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku Canselor. Sebagai tanda penghargaan dan menjunjung kasih atas keberangkatan Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku Canselor dan Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku Akan Besar Negeri Sembilan Darul Khusus, Majlis dengan segala hormat mempersilakan yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Canselor untuk mempersembahkan cendera kenangan kepada Beliau Mahamudra Tuanku berdua. Menjunjung kasih Tuan,